I'm also serving as the chair of the American Alliance of Museums Environment Climate Network. Welcome to the 2022 UN Climate Week event, and I'm your host today. As you know, heads of states converged in New York City this week for the UN General Assembly. And what is a better time than now to discuss the global topic of climate action? We are thrilled you're joining us today, and my speakers are as well. First, we would like to invite Laura Guerra-Miguez from the Institute of Museum and Library Services in Washington, D.C. Laura oversees the museum programs, and she's also a leader I admire very much. So thank you, Laura, for taking the time today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Joyce, and thanks everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you today. And on behalf of the Institute for Museum and Library Services, very honored to be in this gathering of the global museum community to talk about ways that museums can activate around the most important issue or set of issues of our day, which are around sustainability, resilience, and climate engagement. For those of you who may not be familiar with IMLS, we are the federal government of the United States' largest funder of museums and libraries, whose mission it is to advance, support, and empower America's museums, libraries, and related organizations through grant making, research, and policy development. IMLS carries out this charge as we adapt to meet the changing needs of the nation's museums and libraries and their communities. Our mission is essential to helping these institutions navigate change and continue to improve their services. And that's why it's really very important for us to be here today to help provide support for this important dialogue and sharing of knowledge. Before we get into the presentation, I'd also like to share with the group from a national perspective how IMLS, as the representative agency for museums here in the United States, is also embracing and looking to take action around issues of sustainability, climate education, and climate response. The Biden administration, the current administration of the US government, has taken some bold moves and commitments to support nationwide investment in environmental sustainability and resilience, as well as laying down significant mandates to all agencies across the federal government to also support engagement and education of the American public in understanding the implications of environmental change and climate crisis. In fact, in particular, Executive Order 14008, that is titled Tackling the Climate Crisis at Home and Abroad, is particularly pertinent for today's conversation because there is a clear acknowledgement that this is a challenge for all of humanity across all borders. And as an agency, IMLS has been tasked with creating strategic commitments and investments to supporting libraries and museums preparation for engaging the public in climate and environmental education, as well as being models within their own facilities and programs on resilience and sustainability. This executive order was issued in January of 2021, and the IMLS has been making progress in policy asks around how we create opportunities in our grant making for supporting programmatic as well as infrastructure improvements for libraries and museums across our various programs. And we are also starting to see support in our legislative branches for providing more investments for museums and libraries to be active in this area. We are also emboldened to make commitments in this area as part of our charge to be responsive to the communities that we serve and the museum communities that we serve. And that is absolutely validated by the 2022 Center for the Future of Museums Trends Watch report that begins to speak about museums as essential community infrastructure for bolstering our education ecosystem, as well as, again, being models for what resilience and sustainability implementation can look like for the American public. And so with that, I hope that it's clear that at the national level in the United States, there is clear commitment and support for the role of museums in this space across a spectrum of activities, from internal operational investments, as well as opportunities for that public education and engagement opportunities that museums are already so well positioned around. And so I'm grateful to be with this community today, to be able to learn from this groundbreaking project in Austria, and to think about how we can lift up this model and spread it worldwide. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lauda. What a great way to start our program. I am now going to share my screen. Wonderful. So for those of you who do not know the AAM, the American Alliance of Museums is the largest museum association in the United States. And I was asked to give an overview of our AAM Environment Climate Network of almost 1,000 members. We cultivate leaders through education, advocacy, and service. And today's program is an example of the goals that we have set for ourselves, particularly access, thought leadership, and global thinking. And what are some of our programs? We had a Sustainability Excellence Award, museums such as diverse as the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, the Nordic Museum in Seattle, and the Bell Museum of Natural History in St. Paul, Minnesota, to the Louisiana Children's Museum in New Orleans, had all won our award in recognition of their green innovation and their exemplary outcomes. And those could include outstanding energy efficiency, carbon and waste reduction, to climate forward thinking in design, operations, and programming. We encourage you to go onto the website and look. And more recently, we had a great collaboration with museum exhibit designers and exhibition departments to green a core function of museums exhibition. So in this Sustainable Exhibition Design and Construction Toolkit, which is also on our website, first we say, do not worry about being perfect. Work towards doing better. There are so many places we could start from, such as establishing an energy budget for your exhibit, to reusing materials and reducing the use of adhesive, design for disassembly after the exhibition, or design for freedom, are all tools for us to make better investment into our future. Choose one or two topics to get started. We also talk about the timeline of integrating this new practice with the entire museum team. Since September, Mindful Materials and the U.S. Green Building Council have supported us to help get the word out about our pledge, which is on your screen right now. So please link on to the pledge at the bottom. We are counting on you to add to the 20 or so early adopters, including the Wild Center, the Nordic Museum, and the Museum of Vancouver, among countless other museum design exhibit firms. So we are all in this together. Now on to our virtual programming and expanding our horizons. During the pandemic, we invited guest speakers far and wide. In 2020, we had Amber Kerr from the Smithsonian, Cecilia Lam from the Jockey Club Museum of Climate Change in Hong Kong, and Jenny Newell from the Australian Museum. It was wonderful to introduce in depth the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, that you will hear more also today. Then in 2021, we had the pleasure of inviting Francis Morris from the Tate Modern, Leonardo Menendez from the Museum of Tomorrow in Brazil, and Massimo Bergamini from Canada to talk about ecological thinking in changing the museum paradigm. The links of those programs are on the screen, as well as my contact information. So after our collaboration with the audiences in Asia Pacific in 2020 and in Latin America in 2021, we are now thrilled to set our eyes on Europe. We learned about this innovative project with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, with ICOM Austria. So now I'm going to turn over to Bettina and Doris to introduce themselves and tell us what they have accomplished last year.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Thank you for the invitation. We are very proud, ICOM Austria, that we can present a project which we are working on since the last 2 years, and I would like to take you back to the year 2020, when the whole cultural sector worldwide, in particular museums, were confronted with lockdowns and have been strongly affected by the COVID-19 crisis. But also the month-long lockdowns have raised questions about the role of museums. How relevant are museums with their collections and exhibitions today? Is it fair to subsidize museums with additional public funds to let them out of the crisis? What will be the role of museums after the pandemic has been defeated? And what is the contribution of museums to society today? The challenge for museum is to ask themselves again and again, what is our core task and how do we communicate topics to whom? Also, with the climate and energy crisis, museums often cannot longer afford the pursuit of more and more museums, more and more program. We knew we have to change, and we have to rethink museums. With this in mind, the board of ICOM Austria started the project 17x17 to strengthen and promote the essential work museums do for the community and how museums can strengthen the solidarity of a society. The idea to open museums to the public goes back to the time, to the age of enlightenment. Our task was and still is to teach democracy, to educate people to take up the human and civil rights, and not to leave art and the discussion about it to the elites. So today, when society is becoming more and more fragmented, and the idea of democracy is constantly being requested, it becomes more relevant than ever to do something about it. The COVID-19 crisis had made the fault lines in our society more visible. And with this knowledge, we, ICOM Austria, have asked ourselves, how can we make visible the contribution that museums make to the solidarity of a society? How can we make the contribution more comprehensive that museums make to the understanding of community. And museums provide the context in which narratives of sustainability and solidarity can be created. With this framework in mind, ICOM Austria developed the project 17 Museums, 17 SDGs. The SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the United Nations in 2015, provide an ideal framework. They are an agenda for the sustainable transformation of our society by 2030 on an economic, social, and ecological level. The SDGs are a call to action for everyone, for individuals as well as institutions. They are an universal call to action to promote, to protect the planet and to improve the lives and prospects of everyone, everywhere. And each SDG can be also broken down on the local level and can be met by providing, for example, also local solutions. The intention, this map you see now, this is Austria in the middle of Europe, and the intention of the project 17 Museums, 17 SDGs is and was to promote the knowledge about the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, and to examine to the extent to which the 17 museums can be implemented in the daily museums work, because we are convinced that museums can't ignore the topic of sustainability and climate change. So the project 17 to 17 is also about raising awareness and transferring knowledge about communicating context, critical questioning, and reflection. But dealing with the SDG is also about creating impulses. And of course, we at ICOM Austria discussed, of course, how can we match the museums and the SDGs? Is there an obvious SDG for the museums? And so, like the working museums receives the SDGs number 8, but since at the end all SDGs should be reflected in the museums work, we decided to use the lottery, and it's so ICOM Austria has nominated 17 museums, as you see, all over Austria, not only in the capital Vienna, from small to large museum, from art museums to scientific museums, to set concrete activities for each of the 17 SDGs. And the key objectives were, as I already said, were to raise awareness, prove information and knowledge, provide information and knowledge, foster critical questioning and reflection, and inspire and encourage the museum staff, but also the visitors. And the key objective was therefore to foster the discussion about sustainability among museums people, and this all cross-departmental and cross-disciplinary. And how the SDGs have been integrated into the daily museums work. This was a process that has been led by Doris Rothauer, and I now ask Doris, and I want to pass over to Doris to tell us how the work with the museums, museums were, and please, Doris.
Okay, sorry, I was still muted. Thank you very much, Bettina. Yeah, what was important for us, Bettina said it already, that the museums co-create together, that they work together, 17 museums, some of them didn't know each other or the staff didn't know each other before. So we first set up a process of workshops where all the museums participated. We asked each museum to nominate a team within the museum that should be across, members of the team should be across all disciplines and should be across all departments in the team, which also might be an unusual process. And these mixed teams of every museum came together regularly in online workshops. Bettina pointed it out already. At that time, we were confronted with lockdown because of Corona. So we did all the workshops online, which the positive aspect of it, none of the 17 museum people, staff had to travel. We could do everything online. You see the process that we set up, understanding, connecting, etc. This was designed according to the SDG compass for small and medium enterprises. So we thought that could be a good model that all could translate also to museum work. So we started with diving deep into understanding what the 17 SDGs are. They are very complex, and some of the museum people admitted that when the project started, they didn't really know what the 17 SDGs are. The same refers to the audience. Most of the audience doesn't know what the 17 SDGs are. So it is really important before you start with specific activities or with create activities. We are all great in the art world creating and generating ideas, but the first step had to be really understanding what the 17 SDGs are about and how they can be connected also on a local level to the specific museum, to museum work before generating the ideas. And the workshops were always a combination of some input about knowledge about the SDGs and also about impact and impact management, and then co-creating in working sessions, breakout groups, where all the 17 museums could exchange their ideas. Sorry. Okay. This kind of process, 17 museums discussing together and also cross-departmental teams within the museums discussing together about values and behaviors, also their internal habits and behaviors, was a new experience for most of the museums, and it had an impact, a huge impact on the staff. So internal discussions, even additional workshops to those that we set up. Museums organized their own workshop. They asked all their staff, collected ideas from everyone in the museum. What could we do about our specific SDG? It was across all disciplines and departments. This was really important. This reflection, reflecting their own organization before you start coming up with activities for the audience was, I think, a very transformative process for all the participating museums. The target groups, so beside the staff, of course, the audience, the visitors, but also the main stakeholders. Working with the 17 SDGs gives you a chance as a museum to integrate the audience and stakeholders in a completely different and maybe new way. So you see museum directors who discussed with someone in a wheelchair about how they could be more inclusive. So it was really about inclusiveness, about participation of the visitors, kids workshops, youth workshops, a lot of participatory and inclusive formats evolved through the fact that we are talking about sustainable development goals that are all about diversity, about participation, about inclusion. Again, this had a huge impact on the work of the museums to be more participatory and more inclusive. Another very important aspect was communication. You see the logo 17 by 17, which means 17 museums, 17 SDGs. This logo was generated by an agency that ICOM asked to create a project identity that could be integrated in every museum's specific visual identity. And this logo line with the 17 by 17 and the written icon 17 museums, 17 sustainable development goals could be combined with a specific SDG, with several SDGs, and many museums used this visual identity that we created and used all the icons, the SDG icons, to inform their audience, their public in general about the SDGs. Some did it on site, as you can see, on the wall, on the floor, on the outside, as an installation. Some did it on social media. You see the purple little square visual, which was one of the museums. They did a series of tips they gave on social media. For example, fit into the museum. So come with the bicycle instead of with your car, and you contribute to the 17 SDGs. So communication, very important part. We also gave a workshop on storytelling, because it is about how do you tell your specific story. And before I hand over to our first museum to talk about their specific activities, I would just give a few outlooks about how do we want to scale the project? How do we want to scale the impact? It's really important for us that this is a starting point to a lot of other activities. So one thing, of course, is we made a publication, first in German, now it is out in English. We just presented it 2 days ago in New York. This publication is a documentation of all the projects, and it's also a manual of how can you follow, how can you go through that process. We encouraged and motivated all the participating museums to continue with their commitment to the SDGs, and we will hear that from the 3 case studies. We created follow-up projects already. You see 10 by 17. So this year we are working with 10 museums, all situated in Vienna. So 10 Viennese museums. And we have already requests from other countries, from abroad, Switzerland, Germany, to replicate the project, the initiative in their country. So this was just a short introduction to the project in general. I would like to give the word on to Otto Hochreiter from Graz Museum as one of the 3 case studies that we present today.
And I would just jump in and invite our audience. If you have questions, please put in the chat. We will try to address them at the end. And co-creation is something that came up in our 2021 webinar talk. And we are just so thrilled to have 3 museums represented: Graz Museum, Salzburg Museum of Modern Art, and the Belvedere Museum. So thank you, Otto. You take the lead.
Thank you very much. Graz is located in the south of Austria and is the 2nd largest city in the country. The Graz Museum is the city's historical museum, and it is very focused on contemporary issues concerning urban society. We see our museum as a producer of social values. We want to contribute to the orientation towards democracy, human rights, social justice, and ecological awareness. The 70 SDGs as the international community visions of a good common future are part of our set of values. We were therefore very pleased to be selected as one of the 17 Austrian museums to participate in the 17 by 17 project. But we were not very pleased that the lot gave us the 14th SDG targets as the theme, which does not fit at all to a landlocked city. Life below water. Conserve and sustainable use of the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. As a museum that is not located by the sea, what contribution should we make to the following? Reduce marine pollution, reduce ocean acidification, reduce overfishing, and so on. Our museum team was disappointed because we thought that Graz was not located at the sea. Since the 17 by 17 project was about establishing the values of the SDGs also in the participating organization itself, we did a big participatory process with all staff members. In this very productive and creative process, it turned out very quickly, Graz is indeed by the sea, if you think comprehensively and globally. Firstly, the exhibition Home Shop by the artist Joanna Zabielska was created. She used a large blue plastic bags that everyone in Austria has at home to design a blow-up sculpture that was like a veil and could also be walked on. Its theme was, of course, the pollution of the oceans by plastic. Secondly, we developed a permanent intervention with the title Graz is located by the sea in our permanent exhibition on the city's history. In addition to the themes of the project of the city, images of the city, diversity and generals, we added the theme of water pollution, of the river that flows through the city of Graz. It is called Mur. In this intervention, in this exhibition, in our permanent exhibition, we show that in the Middle Ages, without any clarification of water, the excrement and the wastewater of the craftsmen were thrown away in the river. We show how in the 18th century the fish were polluted by the stinking waste and the wastewater. We show in this exhibition, how in the 19th century the beginning of industry polluted the river, the Mur, even more. Because of the explosion of the population, this was a disaster itself. With money from USA, with dollar credits, it was finally possible to finance the biggest infrastructure project in Graz, the water canalization. Since that time, human excrements no longer sink into the river. But after 1945, the river was so heavily polluted by industry that it became almost black in color, evil smelling and covered in foam and floating oil. Only the idea of an environmental protection after 1980 gradually improved the water quality. With this exhibition in the exhibition, Graz is located by the sea, was the title. We show the visitors how little the city has to take care of itself and how much in ecology everything is connected to everything else. What flows into our river Mur flows into the other river Drau and ultimately via the Danube into the Black Sea. We make it clear to our visitors that, seen in this way, Graz actually is located by the sea. In this way, the Graz Museum demands responsibility for our world in our present daily practice. Especially in times of crisis, we want to fully fulfill our social political responsibility. However, the 17 by 17 project has also changed our museum organization and also improved our own attitude towards environment. As many in the team were not aware of the SDGs, the awareness of the entire museum team for the UN Sustainability Development Goals was increased. Yeah, with that, I pass on to my colleague in another beautiful Austrian city, Salzburg, Friedrun Schwanzer. She's the managing director of the Museum of Modern Art in Salzburg.
Thank you, Otto. Thank you. I'll try to start my presentation. Let's see if that works. That's probably not the right one. Sorry about that. So I think that's better. So my name is Friedrun and I'm the head of finance at the Museum der Moderne in Salzburg. And we are a mid-sized museum focusing on modern and contemporary art. And yeah, you can see the picture. We are located in the city center of Salzburg, but on a little mountain overlooking the city. And we were working on the SDG number 2, Zero Hunger. There we go. So when we were confronted with this target number 2, Zero Hunger, we said, how can we as a museum of modern art located in one of the richest countries of the world, how can we relate to that, to zero hunger, to, well, this hunger is not a priority topic in our country, so how can we relate to this? And as Doris already mentioned, in the beginning, we had to educate ourselves about hunger, world food topics, hunger in this world. And when we were made aware that more than 800 people are currently suffering from hunger throughout the world, and how vast tons of food are wasted in first world countries, we said, this project, we have to take this project and make a difference. We have to we have to reach out to a wider audience, we have to inform them, we have to discuss with them, and we have to try to trigger action, because that's a topic that we really care about and we want to make a difference. So we decided not to integrate that in our exhibition, but to use our museum as a platform for discussion, a platform to educate people, and also to cooperate with other institutions, because that we think that this is the way forward. Because if you cooperate with other cultural or NGOs or cultural institutions, for one, they usually are specialized and know the topic way better than we do, and secondly, you just reach a wider audience. So those were our focus topics: be a platform for discussion and work together with other institutions. And I would like to give you a short overview, or about the actions that we took. The first action, or the first question that we had was, how can we, the museum team, stop wasting food? And that's actually an internal project in the project, and a project that stuck by us from the beginning. So starting with our first project team session, we said, what can we do? What can we personally, or what can we as an institution do to stop wasting food? And we came up, or some creative members of our teams came up with the idea to create a little cookbook or a collection of recipes, where each team member was asked to provide recipes or tips, or like family knowledge of how to best use up leftovers. So and we really got a huge response there, and many different recipes. And so we came out of this with a fine little recipe collection that we also shared with our cooperation partners and with our audience, and which can be downloaded on our website. And besides that, this was a really great means of internal communication. With this little cookbook project, we really managed to get our team on board and create a wide basis in the museum of people who cared about this project and who wanted to help to make an impact. The next question that we had was, how can we reach out to our community? And how can we best, we as a modern art museum, how can we best present the topic of world hunger and food waste to our museum community? And we found out that there's a World Food Day, which is the 16th of October, by the way. And we decided that this would be our day of action. So for this day, we started some partnerships and cooperations with other NGOs and other museums in Salzburg. And two of the main ones are presented here. So there's the NGO called Caritas, and they, among other activities they do have a food program. So they raise money for food boxes, and people who live below the poverty threshold in Austria, and also people who suffer from hunger in third world countries, will get food boxes. So we decided to work together with them and equip our museum with little boxes to collect money for this NGO and for that for those food boxes. And on this World Food Day, which we defined as a day of action for us, they came to us in the museum and presented their food program, their food boxes, and there was quite a response from the audience, as many interested people, and I think we managed to raise a fair amount of money for them. The second cooperation was with the Freilichtmuseum in Salzburg. This is a farm heritage museum, and they also took part in the 17 by 17 program. And they were focused on SDG number 4, which is education. And we said, this is an ideal combination that we can work together. So we chose this World Food Day to have have a program in both of the museum, and we had a shuttle connecting our two museums. And the Farm Heritage Museum you can see this little picture where they have this village of old farmhouses. So they use the farm kitchens to give little courses on how to bake bread, how to preserve food. They also had a session on waste cooking from a farming perspective, and this was that was a really nice program as well. So. And of course, we also wanted to reach out to the visitors in our museum on that day. So we organized a panel discussion on the sustainability of food production and distribution. We invited several scientists from universities and also political activists to engage with us in a discussion, and it was a very lively and interesting discussion, and it was also broadcasted online. And in our museum entrance area, we organized a little food fair. So we invited several NGOs and associations to present their organization, their programs. So we had farmers, they do some ecologic farming, and they will give you their produce. They will send it to you every week and bring vegetables to your door. And we had food sharing organizations and also urban gardening initiatives. So quite a range of different associations, and it was very interesting and good to see that there are so many initiatives already also on a local level. And we also had some additional community outreach initiatives. We had a cooperation with a local art house cinema called Das Kino, and we also wanted to raise awareness by showing some interesting movies and films related to world hunger and also food production and waste cooking. And those movies were shown in the movie theater as well as in the museum. So we had special hours for schools that they could watch those movies for free in our museum, but they were also shown at the regular movie time at night in this art house cinema. And our art education team cooperated quite closely with the teams of Fridays for Future, and we opened up our museum venue in the old city to provide them, the protesters, with room and material for their protest signs. So it really was quite a bundle of activities, because our museum project team came up with so many creative ideas, and all the cooperation partner we asked they were ready to help us, to support us. And we really feel that that not only on the World Food Day, but throughout this project, we have made a difference. We have reached people who we would not have reached normally, who would not visit our museum normally, but we somehow reached them and managed to touch them with one of our actions, and we are really proud of that. So, but of course, after the project is before another project. So the question is, what now? So how do we continue? And I've given a few examples of how this project 17 by 17 and the SDGs are now part of our regular museum life, because we integrate them in our mission statement. So we said the SDGs, as well as the fact that we want to be a stronger forum for discussion, a platform for debate, for current socio-political topics, including all the SDGs and climate crisis topics, because we really feel that this is how we as a museum can make a difference. And we are striving to be also certified as a green museum within the next year. So there is this, in Austria, we have this Austrian eco label, where which also works for museums, and we are currently busy looking at our processes and the facilities and see what needs to be replaced, what needs to be changed, how can we work our way towards a greener museum and towards this certificate. And last year, we also had had a selection process for a new museum cafe in one of our venues. And we also included the topics of fair trade, use of local products, things that we learned in the SDG project as a selection criteria for this for the cafe, because it's rented out. So we had some applicants and we had to choose. And of course, the cooperation with the NGOs that we established during the project continues. So for example, we actually kept the donation boxes and are now raising monies for Ukrainian refugees. And it's still a cooperation with Caritas, the same NGO that we had. So all in all, I have to say, we, just like Otto said before, we got our SDG. We were like, we don't really know too much about that. And after the deep dive, we began to care more. we wanted to make a difference. There was a huge bundle of ideas where we could choose from, and we really it was such a positive experience. We really felt we made a difference, and we are proud to be part of it. So thank you very much for your attention, and I've included my contact data. Please feel free to contact me at any time if you have any questions or are open for cooperation. Thank you. And I will now hand over to my colleague Alexandra Gut from Belvedere for your project.
Yes, hello. Really happy that you gave us this platform to present our project within these frames. We also want to thank ICOM Austria for initiating this project. This was really an important process for all the museums taking part in it. And I think we all agree that we learned a lot about ourselves and our access to how to deal with SDGs. I also prepared a little presentation, which I want to share with you now. I think any one of you still shares a presentation. Is this true? Friedrun, are you still in? Is that possible? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. Am I still blocking your?
I'm afraid so, yes, because I cannot. Now it works, I think. Okay.
Better now?
Better now?
Sorry about that.
Doesn't matter. Thank you. Can you see the presentation now?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm Alexandra. I'm responsible for public relations at the Belvedere Museum. I expect a lot of you will know the Belvedere Museum in Austria. It's a huge building complex of Baroque palaces and gardens, but it also includes a contemporary house, a modern pavilion, the Belvedere 21. And we got by lot the SDG clean water and sanitation. I think, to be honest, I think our situation was quite contrary to your situation, because when we got the SDG, we thought, wow, we are happy about it. This is a great SDG. We have a lot of water around our buildings. We can deal with the issue of water. It occurred that it came in a second that it's just easy on the surface, because how to deal with this beauty of water in our houses, with this beauty of water in the collection. So this was a challenge as well, not only an advantage. And we tried to find an approach where we could deal with another way of thinking of water in this context. Let me just see. I can't see my presentation right now. I want to start the presentation. I want to start talking about our project by introducing you to the team. Not only to give honor to those who earn honor, but also to show you the variety of departments which were included in this project. Doris already told you that this was one aspect of the whole thing, not to make it a curatorial project, not to make it a communication project, but to include a lot of different sections of an institution. So it was me from public relations, it was Christiane Erharter, curator from community outreach, Doris Hofer, responsible for marketing, Roland Skreter, responsible for facility management, and Susanne Wögerbauer, who made the guiding tours at this time. We had a few initiative questions we started this project with. And the questions were very general. What can we contribute? What can art contribute to the discussion about current climate crisis? What can art do? What science or politics cannot do? What is our role as a museum in this process? So these questions were really general, but I think they led us to an approach we found for ourselves, not to give answers, but to provide motivation, and not to find the solutions, but to set some impulses with the matters of art. As I already said, Baroque builders of the Belvedere were already very fond of water, but of course their approach was very playful. We have fountains, we have a pond. In the collection there are a lot of artworks which show a very beautiful side of water. And the thought we had was this nowadays climate situation has changed our attitude towards availability and sustainable management. But has it really? This is the question. What is important for me is also that we always had in mind that sustainability implies an ecological dimension, of course, but also a social dimension. And sustainable for us meant that we always had in mind to keep measures and language short and simple to reach as many people as possible. I may now introduce you to the projects we developed out of this approach, which all emerged out of this motto, providing motivation. First of all, we created a trailer, which we showed out on social media. This should not explain too much. It should also only be an impulse, make curious and make people look at this, what is Belvedere doing there? The core piece, I think, of our project was a booklet guided tour we created through the whole Belvedere area. We called it The Ways of Water. Everybody can do this tour on his or her own. You can download it on the website. You can get it on the box offices hard printed, and it shows you different questions which could arise by watching art. We also installed gender neutral toilets in all our sites and accompanying all this, we made some events and lectures which deepened all these issues. We created a website. Please have a look. You're invited at Green Belvedere, where we also explained what is our access to this, what is our approach, and shows the different projects. To begin with, by showing you this project, I want to show you the trailer we created. I hope it works, because I think I have to allow you the sound. Okay, now the sound works. Let me start again, because now the sound works. Okay, so this was the trailer we showed on social media before we started the core project of called The Ways of Water. The concept behind it is, as I already said, lead through the collection, lead through the museums, lead through the parks and the surrounding gardens, and showing things you might already have seen a lot of times by raising questions you might not have had until now. So we try to provide some information and motivation through artworks and architecture. We invite you to discover art historical approaches to water and the impacts on today's life. But we also ask you to perhaps find an inspiration and new ways of reflecting on today's situation and future related actions. I took out 2 examples of this booklet. All in all, it's 17 stations. Of course, we cannot go through all of them, but I think I took 2 where I thought this might show the range of sites you can visit and questions which we try to set in the mind of our visitors. The one is an object which is located in the garden of Belvedere 21. It's a sculpture by Louis Weinberger, Wild Cube, from 2011. It's a kind of cage, and in this cage, all plants can grow as they grow. You're not allowed to step into it. You're not allowed to take anything out. It plays a significant role in promoting sustainable urban development. And some questions, I wrote it on the sheet, you can read it, but some questions might be, do you have a garden or grow plants on your balcony? Examine the uncontrolled growth in the artwork. How many different plants and animals can you spot? Which one are familiar with you? Where can you find your freedom? And the other example I chose is, of course, because it's the core piece of our collection, The Kiss by Gustav Klimt. And we also tried here to find another approach, we might not have thought of by looking on this picture until now. because Gustav Klimt is famous for having used gold, copper, lithium, all in this picture. We use it nowadays for computers and smartphones, but it's an industry which has a high virtual water footprint and uses a lot of water. And of course, a lot of questions about the production of gold and metal rise when you look at it. For example, what is the virtual water consumption of your electric appliances? Do you know where gold mines are located around the world? Who works there? Consider the conditions necessary for fair trade gold. So you see, we try to find questions which might not be too obvious. As last, I want to present you the gender-neutral toilets, which we also installed as one project in all our venues. So you can find gender-neutral toilets now in all our museums in response to social equality and diversity demands. Yes, this is a very short overview. We invite you to come to Belvedere and walk through the ways of water. Feel welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you to ICOM Austria and the speakers. We feel like we have gone all over Austria in a very short amount of time this morning. Particularly having the opportunity to visit the museums. I want to now start the Q&A session of our program. And again, if you would like to have a question, put it in the chat and make sure that we see it as a question. I'm going to invite the speakers back on the camera, and perhaps we can start a conversation about what your reflection is. It is so wonderful to hear that self-reflection process that involves different departments. I would like to ask, each of you if you have any recommendations for our American museums here. Does anyone want to start?
Maybe I could start if you would allow me. I saw the question in the chat also why there was a lottery and museums were not able to pick. And I think this relates to that because my, what I would suggest is that this was the best part in the end. Because we would have picked a completely different SDG, and I would suggest to take the one that you least relate with, because that's it's a really interesting process and things you never thought about it. Yeah, that would be my tip actually. Do something completely new.
Love it. Feel uncomfortable and really ask the hard questions. Appreciate it.
And as I said in my presentation, I think it's not always the best to do the obvious. It might be harder to say goodbye to some concepts you have in mind than just beginning something new. And another tip I would have is start the process from inside and not thinking the visitors. I think this was also very important for us. How do we deal with this issue? How different is the side of facility management than the side of a curator or public relations? This might be really totally different on the same issue.
Bettina.
Why we decided to use the lottery was really that it was nearly impossible to say this museum should take this SDG and the other one another, and because we have to say it was a pilot project. We didn't know how it's gonna end. And we are still surprised how perfect the SDGs matches our museums work. But there was a lot of learning about the SDGs, about changing our mind, to open our mind, and to make it available for museums people, that working with the SDG really enriches your communication internally, but also with the public. And at the end, now in our second project, we have enough experience that we also can ask the museums, what are you interested in? So of course now we let them choose the SDGs, but also to engage them, that they are more open to subjects which are not in the line.
Wonderful.
I can maybe add.
Udo?
I can maybe add an information because in the new project we were talking about the 10 museums in Vienna dealing with the 17 SDGs. We gave the presentation of what the 17 museums last year did to the 10 museums, and after that presentation gave them the possibility to choose their SDG on their own. And because they saw what great creativity comes out of dealing with any of the SDGs, it was really interesting that none of the 10 museums choose the same. So in the end, we really came up with a broad range of different SDGs among the 10 museums, and some of them even chose 2 and some chose 3, but it was important to inspire them with the pilot.
Wonderful. And Otto?
Yeah, probably it will have an impact on the rest of your exhibition program. For example, in Graz Museum, we made an exhibition after the project on sustainable cities and communities. And we are preparing now an exhibition on a decent work and economic development. An exhibition in parallel to an exhibition on Alois Schumpeter, for example. So probably it will have an impact on your exhibition program.
Wonderful. So some questions from the audience. Someone asked about the public accountability of SDG. I think this is a really great topic, particularly this week when countries are looking to meet their goals. Museums can similarly do that through SDGs. Do you want to address that? And then also combining that with another question, how do you see this as an activist campaign? So compliance on one side, the other, museum as activists to help the community move forward. Any of you want to address that?
I would start with it because I think we all had a very different approach to this project. Our approach was not an activist one. We wanted to give impulses which could lead to activism, but we as a museum wanted to raise the questions, wanted to set impulses, wanted to give ideas. And I think this is one of the main efforts art has, just to give impulses and ideas in your mind. But of course, you could also choose an activist point of view and access. What we also do with this project is that, for example, we choose some special days, as for example, the Day of Water or Climate Week, when we offer guided tours. So all over the year, visitors can do it on their own, but we do some special programs on special days. But perhaps Friedrun, Otto, you want to add something to that?
So as me being the more activist one.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. No, I think we had quite some discussions on how to tackle this, how just how active how active we should be, and in the end we said, how do we make a difference for our community? Like how do people in Salzburg feel that we need us, that they need us? Besides all the Mozart and festivals and Baroque beauty. So we said, isn't this part of us, part of our job, to also raise the question, but raise the question not only to those who come into our museum and look at our exhibitions, but also to the wider community, to present ourselves as a platform where you can discuss things. And of course, it's always a little bit, we are all public financed. So it's and that, for me, it's a good sign that it's possible to do that, of course. That and to be honest, zero hunger is probably also a topic where everybody would agree that something needs to be done. So it's not a really edgy topic that would involve too much criticism. So yeah. So I think for us it paid off. We really felt that we had reached people that wouldn't have come to our museum or wouldn't really never have thought about visiting us, and we were on their agenda. So, and also the topic, of course.
Yes, Otto?
Yeah, I think it's very complicated to be an activist as a museum, as a public museum. That was also the discussion on the museum definition of ICOM, as you remember. For example, we did an exhibition on sustainable cities as an exhibition on cycling, for example. So it was a real museum exhibition, but the theme behind it was the sustainable city.
That's wonderful. And because you're publicly financed, the public accounting and the fact that you're public look to you for programming, and you can go into each of these SDGs going forward now. Hopefully, you will begin to develop that framework with the help of ICON as well. I do notice that we have gone on for more than 75 minutes. And there are many more questions, and I hope that we can continue the discussion moving onwards. But I would like to invite Lauda for a last word, a reflection on today's speeches and presentation. And we're just really happy to have this international collaboration. Lauda?
Thank you so much, Joyce, and thanks to the entire panel for bringing this incredible model and projects and lessons learned to our community, to our not only American community, but global community. And just a couple of closing thoughts is that across all of the stories here provided such a diverse outline of the many ways that museums can meaningfully take on participation with very high level efforts and initiatives like the SDGs or any other high level policy goal that comes out of agencies like mine and the United Nations. It's often hard to understand what to do. And I think the most inspirational part of all of these stories is that each one of your institutions worked from its strength as a museum to interpret and chart and experiment with ways forward that had both internal as well as external impacts. And so I really want to thank and celebrate every one of you for showing just how powerful museums are by being museums, and how we can expand the frontiers of what museums can take on in terms of content, while still leveraging what we know are the core strengths of our institutions. So I hope that there will be much inspiration from these models for implementation with everybody here that is here with us live, or perhaps watching this after the session. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here and be part of the program today.
Well, thank you all for participating, joining our panelists. And today's program, we don't intend to give answers by quoting from our speaker, but to set some impulses, provide ideas to moving on to a better world. Maybe that's what the UN Climate Week has inspired us to do. So thank you again from all the organizations that's been involved, AEM, Environment Climate Network, certainly thank you, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.